This is Difficult Terms, take one.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about something that is everybody's favorite topic, which is governance. And if you have been on a board for any kind of organization, especially if it's a church or a nonprofit, you will have probably had a less than stellar experience. Boards, in my experience, don't function very well, primarily because they don't know why they're there. They don't understand the concept of governance. And interestingly, it has biblical roots. There's a passage in 1 Corinthians 12:28, and within that passage is a word that isn't focused on very often. We're all about teachers and evangelists and prophets and the other parts of that verse. But then comes the word that's usually translated as administrator. So the gift of administration is an unfortunate way to translate that word. The actual translation would be better as governance. And the idea behind this word, it was has a Latin root, is that it was the person who directed the way. So it has a bit of a maritime flavor to it. So it became a metaphor for strategic leadership and knowing the way. So governance is the coming together of a group of elected or appointed individuals to act as one for the purpose of guiding the organization of which they hold trusteeship. And we might use the word stewardship there, toward the accomplishment of its ends while establishing appropriate boundaries for accountability. So typically there are two kinds of boards. One would be a founder's board, so a very dynamic personality has a vision for something that desperately needs to be done, attracts his friends and buddies to be on the board, and they become basically a rubber stamp for that individual. The other type of board is the hands off. They really just want to get together once a year, make sure the books are balanced and that things are going fairly well, and they're content. And if you've been on boards, your experience may have been that they dealt a lot with what we might call minutia. And there's always stories of church boards that split and had fractures because they couldn't decide on the color of the carpet for the narthex or some such trivial matter. And this is a basic fundamental misunderstanding of what governance is supposed to be about. So, governance is really supposed to be about making sure that the organization achieves its end, the reason for which it exists. Some put that in terms of what good for who, and they add sometimes at what cost. So, why does your organization exist? What do you seek to accomplish in the world? There's a wonderful book that I think you would do well to have in your library called Mission Drift by Peter Greer. And in chapter 7, especially, he highlights the importance of governance and especially the importance of who you choose to be on your board. His team did research on two organizations. One started out as the Christian's Children Fund. Actually, it had a different name in the very beginning, but it became known as the Christian Children's Fund. And the other is Compassion International. They both started out as child sponsorship programs, two of the innovators in that type of ministry. And if you look at the history of Christian Children's Fund, it is no longer Christian. There began to be a lot of confusion about their purposes when donors were giving to something that had the Christian name in it, but they couldn't see anything in there that had to do with Christianity. So to clean things up, the board decided to take the word Christian out. The other organization, Compassion International, has maintained its purpose, its Christian focus, and the primary reason, as far as Peter Greer's team could discern, was that they were very careful in their governance. So they took being a board member and participating in that very seriously. And what they found was that one of the key elements of good governance is who is chosen to be on the board. Now, again, if you've had any experience with boards, oftentimes the board will be made up of lawyers or bankers or people who have a lot of experience in whatever your ministry happens to be about. Now, those can be good board members, and I'm sure that many of them are, but I think the tendency then happens to tilt the governance towards management. And there's a total difference between the two. And we confuse administration with governance quite often. Boards are meant to hold administration accountable for achieving the ends for which the organization exists. So governance is making sure that the end for which you exist is a good one, especially if you're a Christian ministry. What good are you going to do for who? As long as it's done biblically, ethically, and legally. And preferably you set up an accountability system that allows the administration to be creative in how they meet that end. And that takes work. It is a pleasure for me to attend the board meetings for one of the organizations that I'm a part of. The reason it's a pleasure is because when we get together, we talk about very high level things. We do not bother ourselves with things that are administrative. We look to the future. We assess trends. What could threaten the ministry in the future? And then we hear reports from administration, very specific reports on how the ends are being achieved. And so it's a really rich time when we have our board meetings because we are a learning board. And we never forget that. And so this governance element is such an important part of success for Christian ministries especially. And I think sometimes there's too much emphasis, well, I don't know if we can have too much emphasis on good administration, but sometimes the emphasis on good administration is not balanced by the same level of excellency in governance. So I think as we bring those two into balance, we will have much greater success in achieving the ends for which the church exists, which is to see the church exist in all people groups and in the places where it has not existed before. Thanks.